Hi, I'm Jonathan Bojarski, founder of Saxophonisto.com. Welcome to this special Mummer String Band edition of the series, where I talk with some of the creative minds who have helped to shape that distinctive string band sound into what it is today. Many of these folks are personal heroes of mine, immensely talented individuals who often work behind the scenes to create the incredible productions showcased at the annual Mummers Parade in Philadelphia. Welcome to part 2 of my interview with the extraordinary John Wernega. In this episode, we pick up the story in 1994 when John embarks on a musical journey beyond the Fralinger String Band, arranging for other bands including Greater Kensington and South Philadelphia. We explore John's diverse musical influences both within and outside the realm of mummery. Join me as we then trace his return to the Fralinger String Band in the late 1990s, taking the reins from the legendary Herbie Smith in crafting the New Year's Day musical score. We delve into the challenges, triumphs, and the incredible journey that led to 8 consecutive wins for Fralinger in the early 2000s. We will discuss some of John's arranging techniques and hear some of his insights for aspiring music arrangers. It's a must-listen interview with a remarkable human being. I know you will enjoy it. I want to go back before I get ahead of myself and go back to 94 and talk a little bit about the transition from 94 into 95, where you actually started going off and writing routines for other bands. Tell me how that came about and what happened with Fralinger, and give me a little bit of the backstory there.
All right, so you guys at Fralinger don't know too much about what happened. So I got a call. I'm trying to remember who called me first. I think it was Italian American. I also got asked by... There were 4 bands I wrote for. It was Italian American, Greater Kensington, Aqua, and South Philly. And Ray Malik was retiring. He was retiring. So I know Ray Malik was running for Kensington, so I was taking over for Malik. South Philly might have been a Malik band also, and I took over for him. So I was excited about it, but I was very quiet about it because I didn't trust it. Because I had enough experiences in the previous years with outside string bands there were some in string band too, where, oh, we've got this opportunity for you. And then all of a sudden, they get somebody else. It's happened to me enough times. I knew I had to leave Fralinger because it's a conflict of interest writing for other bands and competing with Fralinger. But I didn't tell them why, because I was afraid that the other bands would then change their mind on me and I would look like a fool. So I just didn't say anything. I just resigned. And
now, was that a requirement in Fralinger that you leave? Because obviously there are people in other bands who have written for other bands before, but was that sort of an unwritten rule?
And I was writing street songs for Trilby before that, and I asked Herbie for permission for that. So I was writing street songs, but I didn't write a routine. I just didn't want to have any bad blood with the people in the band. And there wasn't a rule. I don't think there was a rule, and they probably wouldn't have stopped me, but people would give me a hard time. And I decided I'll just step out. And I thought it'll be a chance to be not a mummer and to sit back and watch it. So I had the 4 bands, and they came through. They actually did have me write.
I'm going to put on a little bit of your Italian American Cuban routine. They sounded great that year. Really strong band. Great stuff.
Oh, you know what? I just heard a moment in there. I remember you were going to say, you were going to ask me about things I would have done differently. Right now that we just heard that, it ended with a moment where if I did it now, I would have traded voices. When it goes, digga 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 da da da. Now, I would go, digga digga da da da. And I would sustain that chord while the tenors, da 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 da. Because now I do a layer and an under layer or whatever you call it. I weave another melody underneath it. It's a different way of doing things than I did back then. But back then, most string bands kept melody in the lead alto for the most of the routine, except for Fralinger. So now I would have moved it to the tenor. I like their sound, really fat, and we only had 4 or 5 lead altos. That was it. That's it. All that sound came from 5. We had other altos on a second alto and then the third alto. Most of the parts in there were split in 5 parts in the bass. So you had 2 tenors, 3 altos in the bass, and that was my thing.
And your Barrys doubled your basses back then, pretty much?
I still, Barrys and double basses, normally in unison. I normally don't do octaves with them, but sometimes I do fifths. But I do as much unison as possible because when you've got the baritone and the bass sax on a unison note, you're going to get more volume out of that note. With Fralinger, we had guys that have low A's on their baritones. So that low A doubles the D on the bass sax. And I would always give them that low A. They gave me recordings from I Love Lucy, like the Cumbanchero. No, the opener. Was I think that was on I Love Lucy. And whenever I hear their band, it reminds me of I Love Lucy. Something about their sound just fit. They could have done the I Love Lucy theme and really sold it because they just had a really fat sound. And so now they carried something from the old string band sound. They had vibrato in their sound. Mm-hmm. You had Danny Kosha Sr. with a very wide vibrato, very big vibrato. And you had a few other guys with vibratos there. And they had this big fat sound. But it was sort of a more sophisticated old string band sound. Like in the 70s, a lot of the bands, the vibrato was just out of control. And you had tuning problems. This band, they were in tune. They were playing difficult music, but they still had that fat vibrato in the lead alto.
And you scored that very fat in the way you wrote it. It was almost very Herbie-esque the way you wrote that routine.
I was coming right off of Herbie.
Yeah.
I was Herbie University, that's Fralinger.
Yeah. You were still kind of, in a way, I guess, finding your own voice there.
And as different as my style is from Herbie's, I still feel that in that 8 in a row, I still feel like I had Herbie in my style. I still think there's an influence in there. Something about the energy. And there's a lot of other influences there. You can't. It's not all Herbie, definitely.
Who were some of the other influences?
Ted Heath. Ted Heath was a big band from England. Not so well known in America. Jazz people would know him. And he had some really driving arrangements. He had a whole Al Jolson album. And what great arrangements. And then the one that really drove me wild was the Just One of Those Things. Ted Heath, Just One of Those Things, which actually was my influence for the Fralinger finale of the Space Year. I always got influenced by arrangement, and then when I wrote it, it wasn't the same, but it had the flavor of that. They pretty close to his ending there. That thing had my blood boiling when I first listened to it, and I couldn't get enough of it. So Ted Heath. Yeah, when I was in college, I was collecting Ted Heath records, and I would go to flea markets or used record stores, and I would always buy another Ted Heath. Right after I graduated college, my older sister Bonnie took me to Zern's farmer's market in Gilbertsville, which was like an Amish farm market, and there was a record salesman there, and I bought my first Hi-Lo's record. It was Suddenly We're the Hi-Lo's, and I knew of the Hi-Lo's before, but I only had one sample recording of theirs. I remember my sister saying, she says, well, check it, make sure it doesn't have any scratches. I said, it's $1. I said, I'm just buying it. And I don't think there were any scratches on there. And that had Basin Street Blues. Man, what an arrangement that was. What a drive that had.
Blues, blues. I got those Basin Street blues. Won't you come along with me to the Mississippi? We'll take the boat to the land of dreams, steam down the river down to New Orleans. The band's there and meet us, old friends to greet us, where all the light and the dark folk meet. This is the place that we call Basin Street.
And Hi-Lo's, their music was just so much fun to listen to.
Yeah.
Big influence. Huge influence. And there are parts of routines that I could tell you that came from Ted Heath, that came from the Hi-Lo's. Sometimes I forget, and then I'm listening to something. I'll go back and listen to these recordings. They say, "Oh yeah, that's in such and such routine. I forgot I got it from there. I couldn't remember that." But they're huge influences. The Carpenters' Christmas album. Yeah, I mean, you hear all this driving, technical stuff I have in there. Carpenter's Christmas album is a big influence. The transitions between the song, like there's a lot of continuity. Like there's song after song with no stop. So there's something in the night routine. And I know Stevie White from Fralinger, when he heard it, he says, "I know you got that right off of that album." So it was the one that went into Night on Bald Mountain. That transition that came off the Christmas album. Favorite arrangements, I got stuck on take 6 my senior year in high school. I rode my bike from Williamstown to Good News Bookstore in Cherry Hill, which is probably like a 20-mile bike ride, to buy it on cassette tape. It probably was a Christian bookstore near me. I could have bought it. I don't know. A friend told me that's where you got it, and I figured that's the only place in Oregon you can find it. So I rode my bike out there, and I listened to that to death. I still have this cassette tape somewhere. I would go on Broomall bus rides, and I had my Sony Walkman, and I'd be listening to Take 6. And there was another, the vocabulary of chords that I acquired from Take 6 and chord progression is just amazing. So that was a big influence. Nowadays, one of my idols is Jacob Collier. I'm sure you've heard a lot of his.
Oh, sure, yeah, he's great.
Flintstones, meet the Flintstones. They're a modern Stone Age family. Stone Age family. From the town of Bedrock, they're a page right out of history. Let's ride with the family down the street, through the car to see your friends to feed. When you're with the Flintstones, have a yabba yabba dabba time. Flintstones, meet the Flintstones. They're a modern Stone Age family. From the town of Bedrock, they're a page right out of history. Let's ride with the family down the street, through the car to see your friends to feed. When you're with the Flintstones, have a yabba yabba do time. Have a yabba do time. We're gonna have a gay old time. Wow! Wow! Wow!
Yeah, that's amazing. And I need to dive into his harmonies. See what he does. His harmonies are definitely not for string bands. You have to have absolute true tuning, and you can't get that on the street. You just can't. Outside in the elements, you're not going to get that tuning that you need, because he'll have the chord, and he'll have the third, and he'll have the fourth in there, which is an unwritten rule. You don't put a fourth and a third together, and he's got it in there.
Yeah.
He has these notes rubbing in there that don't even belong in there, but he's singing them so in tune and so musically Well, I mean, like atonal works. Like you take Schoenberg, if you have a good enough group playing Schoenberg or Stravinsky, it sounds like great music.
Right.
Oh,
Absolutely.
and there's no sense to any of the chords or harmony. It's all atonal.
Any other influences?
Well, there's string band influences.
Who are some of your string band influences?
So, okay, so like I already said that I spilled the beans that Quaker City was actually the band I wanted to join. I love those jazz chords in the intro and all the transitions. When I joined Fralinger, Herbie Smith told me that is they're written by Michael Quayle. So Jim Fox writes the songs, and Quayle was writing the transitions.
I
I'm
think
very
it
impressed
was.
with how they work as a team.
Yep. Indeed.
And those transitions were seamless. And both of them, Fox and Quayle, that combination was a sound you'll never hear again in string bands.
That was an amazing sound. Remember the tenor section from Quaker City of the late 80s? It was just like, oh, those powerful tenors. Unbelievable.
But it'll never be reproduced again. That sound they had. And it's also a combination of the sound of the band. Quaker City also had vibrato in their lead altos, which I know most people were like, no, 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 don't do. And but it was tight.
Mm-hmm.
And the combination of the type of tone quality the band had with the arrangements put out by Jimmy Fox and Michael Quayle as a combination is a classic sound that's a signature of the 80s that you'll never hear again. So Quayle is an influence of mine also. He took over routines, and I remember Herbie talking to me. He says, now John, Quayle's going to be writing the whole routine for Avalon and Quaker. And Herbie was saying, I'm really interested in hearing what a routine sounds like where every chord is a jazz chord. And I was excited too, because I thought, oh, the jazz chords. And Michael Quayle wrote the jungle routine for Avalon. I can't tell you how many times this year I go on YouTube and put on his jungle routine from 1992. The chords are awesome, but there's an energy in there. Not just the chords, but that forward motion. And it just drove from beginning to end. And it was just so amazing. So, and the drill was all over the place. That was one great thing. I don't like the suits, but it didn't bother me because the show and the music were just a great pair. And you had Denny Quayle with those creative ideas.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And Fool in the Eye with things. Quayle, he wrote the Avalon's Pirate theme. Wow, what an amazing chart. Mm-hmm. And it was a perfect fit for that band. And then the theme that Avalon did, here's another one that I'm one of the few people in the world that likes, is their bird theme in 1995. Their jazz club Birds. They played So What from Miles Davis. When would you ever hear that?
Right, exactly.
And I remember like being in South Philly's club, because I marched with South Philly that year. That was my first year writing. We did our Roman rhythms, and we're at the bar and we're watching the bands, and I'm listening to Avalon, and I'm hearing the last chorus da 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 da, the chromatics, and I said, did I just hear what I thought I heard? They had the guts to end a routine on a sharp ninth. I was like, whoa, that took guts to do that. And I love that routine. I'll still watch that now. Those arrangements. Nightingale sang in Berkeley Square. What an awesome arrangement they had. And they did a nice drill to complement that. And then he had that one special chord, and they shook the feathers.
Mm-hmm.
and that locked in with those chords, and then very well one of my really big influences from the '90s, and it's Uptown. Another one you will never have that again. It was a combination between your music arranger and his brother,
Jim
drummer.
Conselman was the music arranger, and Dennis Conselman was the drill director, and that was a
Funny.
very unique sound indeed.
And the shows you guys did fooled the eye. You you saw things like I still don't understand how you marched through the Arch of Triumph and then it folded out into a solid backdrop. Like where'd the opening go? I don't see it. And the can dancers at the end looked so great. You had so many things. The year you did the Egyptians, I didn't know they were dummies coming across the line. I actually thought they were all people that coming across as the Egyptian slaves. I
Oh,
didn't
right,
realize that.
right. Lots of dummies. Yes.
Yeah, well, you guys like to work with the dummies because you did it with the can dance. You guys were so innovative. But your music, there was some kind of energy in your music that has never been reproduced in Mummers. Like in I Love Paris, they were minor, in a minor key, and then it went into major key, and you played that C6 chord
Right.
up high.
A lot of tight sixth chords that he used. A lot of really tight 4-part writing. Right.
Rhythms, the tempo you played was a faster tempo than most string bands were doing. The rhythms you played and those chords and the tightness of it, you had this bright, energetic, fun sound that nobody had in string bands ever. And it's a combination with the sound of your band too. If your band didn't, the sound of your band didn't lock with that, it wouldn't be
Right.
good. And your show also, your shows were so creative. One time, Mike Ryer was talking to our band in the '90s. It was after New Year's, and we had a meeting. He says we need to get some better ideas. We need to have some wow factors. And he says one band we need to watch out for is Uptown. I remember him saying that. And Fralinger never talked about other bands. It was always us. But he noticed Uptown. Nice stuff. That's an influence for me. You
It's a nice the thing about that sound that Jim Conselman had was it was simple yet complex. You know, the
yeah.
routines were not hard to play. They were hard to play well, but they sounded very sweet and full, and those harmonies were very unique. Again, having those tight sixth chords, that was not a harmony that was used and very often up until that time, nor has it really been since. And those weren't hard to play, but they sounded very lush, but not fat in the way that a Herbie arrangement would sound. It was here. It wasn't this kind of depth. It was this kind of depth, and really unique.
it was a style on its own. So he had him there, but it wasn't. It was different with Uptown. It wasn't just the chords. There was a special energy in there that nobody had. That was just so much fun to listen to.
Yeah, and how it was married with the production, certainly. So,
Married to the
absolutely.
production. Absolutely. So that's influences. I'm trying to think. Is there one more in string band besides that? Well, I mean, the Stackwoods years. That's an influence. Although I don't do a lot of the Stackwoods stuff. I haven't done a lot of the ragtime stuff that Herbie does. I call them ragtime licks. It's all ragtime because that's very Scott Joplin.
Yeah.
So I've learned them in street songs, but not in the current routines. So one thing that I should say about the routines I wrote within that 8 in a row is that I used to say that my routine, I need the routine to follow a certain line and not stray from that. Um, stay in that one course in that line. So we did the Pirates. It was suggested to me by somebody in the band that we do a Caribbean drunken sailor at the end. So I brought that up one week, and I wrote my tail off on that. It was a very nice chart. Billy Garten loved it, but you had this line. That was a very orchestral routine, and then it took you in a whole. It took you. You took a turn someplace else. I said it doesn't belong there. It's off the line. So I went to the public library in Williamstown and I checked out some pirate movies and I found a movie called Crimson Pirate. And the finale of it fit the line we're in. very driving. In fact, the finale of that was the forerunner of the Gypsy routine. The Crimson Pie. Ba 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 ba. Very Slavic sounding. Very Slavic. I loved it, and it was definitely a forerunner of those gypsies. And the guys in the band loved it, and it has been used since then. It's a tune that was never heard in Mummers before, but I found it on that movie. The year we did the Latin American, they wanted. We had a coffee house scene, and the guys are going to kill me for talking about this, but I'm talking about the line that I want us to follow musically, and the energy and the style. Oh God, they tease me to no end about this. The coffee song. I'm telling you, I wrote it as best as I could. I made very fat chords. It was all 5-6 part jazz chords in there. I did the best I could, but I couldn't get it to fit into the line of this drive we had. It kind of like made the band fall off a cliff at that one point, and it didn't continue that thing. And I felt like we lost a parade right there.
1, 2, 1 and 2.
So what I did is I took the second half of Tico Tico. Because the first half is... and then I took the second part that goes... Actually, that has ragtime rhythms in there. And that really brought things to life right there. That brought us up to the next notch. And it was actually, that was like finale's quality right there. One of our in the 8 in a row, especially toward the tail end of the 8 in a row, was that sound like we have a finale. But then what they don't know is there's something even better, higher level coming. Like the Cowboy year, we played Deep in the Heart of Texas. And it sounded like the finale, but we had more coming, and it was the next level up, and it was the Orange Blossom special.
Right.
That was one that I wrote in the spring, and it sounded like a Rubank exercise, and I put it away. I didn't like how it came out, and but then they talked me into bringing it back because they had the Stagecoach coming out, and they said we need something. They said revisit it, and I changed the rhythms I used the same runs I wrote in the spring, but I changed the rhythms in the bottom underneath it, and more jazzy rhythms, and between the two, it got the right drive. Actually, that one, the ba 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 da da ba da 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 was all 6 chords, like the Uptown run in the '90s. So there was a little bit of Uptown underneath it. That did something for there. But it was like we had. It sounded like the finale was there. That Deep in the Heart of Texas could have been our finale, but we had another one coming.
You had Orange Blossom coming.
So, and then in the Latin years, the same thing. That Tico Tico could have been the finale. Very, very, very powerful, driving, energetic. And then we had Comanchero, which I revisited because I wrote that for Italian American in 1995 as the walk-in song.
Right.
And it was a challenge. In fact, I remember I wrote it one way, and I had melody in the lead alto, the top alto part. And then I wasn't happy with it. I changed the melody to the tenors, and I had all this other stuff going on in the altos. So I brought that up, and I remember Mike was mad at me, Mike Ryer. He says, John, we already wrote a drill to it in a dance. It's already choreographed. And I said, it's so much better. So please, just let's keep this in there. So he let me keep it in there.
Did he have to change the drill?
He did. You know what, though? He had changed drills all the time anyway, because he always wanted things better, like me. We were the same way. We would always keep on revising things. And he would have changed it anyway, because he always came up with a better idea. And he didn't. If he had a better idea, he used it. He wanted to win. He wanted the best for us. So,
how'd you like working with Mike?
Oh, he was great. Very professional. Very, very, very professional. Um, and we had to have give and take. We had our moments where we disagreed on things. We did, and thank God we won those parades. Oh my God, thank God we won. So because I was thinking, oh my God, if we lose, he's going to kill me for putting that song he didn't want in there. And then we won. Like, okay, God, thank you.
Can you give me an example of one of those songs?
Wait a minute. Well, the tea, the coffee house, the coffee song. I know if he hears this, he's going to kill me. But I'm sorry, Mike. I'm really sorry, Mike. But I was really going with what I felt was best musically. It wasn't anything against Mike. I just the Tico Tico worked, and he made it work too. He finally says, he says, John, write whatever you want now. He says, I gave up. Just write whatever you want, and he worked with it. He made an awesome drill out of that. I love that Latin drill. Yeah, Mike had some awesome stuff. He was very happy that at that point that the band was ready to start doing the drills he really, really wanted to do. And when you think about it, look at it, Mike Ryer started drilling in '76, and he drilled the Birth of American Music was his first drill, I think. I don't think he drilled in '75. Basically a block drill, a '70s typical block drill where they really didn't do that much, and that's what the band did in the '70s. And he was able to transition our band into a remember Blast, the drum and bugle corps?
Sure.
He was able. He loved that. He transitioned us into Blast from traditional So that's amazing. And then Herbie, you gotta say, starting in the '60s with just block chords, what string band's doing, and going through all those decades, he wrote for 35, 36 years.
Yeah, really long time.
He stuck with the times. He kept up with the times, or the times kept up with him. He established the times.
He did.
But it's amazing to see because the bands back then, they look like they can't drill. They look like it's not even possible to play hard music or do anything but a block drill. And the bands were transitioned into full drills with props and scene changes. And so captains, I have to say here, one captain that you have to really give a lot of credit to, Bob Shannon, became voted in captain the year I was born, '71. And captains basically back then strutted around with a backpiece. And they showed off their pretty suit. One year he just comes out in a totem pole. And he opened it up and became a bird. And that was it. You look at him in 1985, dancing like you can't believe. And he obviously had that in him. But it's just amazing how he transitioned from the old style string band of basically a captain with 2 strings in his hands and a bouquet of flowers to dancing up a storm. And he made it all the way till 2008. So, and like Quaker City that year, they did an amazing drill. That was a whole drum and bugle corps show. It was out of this world.
You mentioned Bill Garten earlier, and tell me about the interplay with you and Bill and how he worked with the band and how he enhanced what you were doing, and just how did that dynamic work?
So Billy Garten was the one that talked Herbie into taking me into the band. That's actually how I got in the band. He talked him into it. When I first joined the band in '90, his son was still playing drums. Billy Jr. Yeah, Tim, his son, was still playing saxophone in the band. Bill would be coming around, and I used to like chatting with him, talking about music. And I used to wonder, why don't they put Bill in front of this band? He's such a good teacher. I went to him in '93 after I graduated college, and I said, I'm going to really learn how to play the saxophone this time. I know what his students can do. I've heard them in the string bands enough. And I know they made all state section leaders all the time. So I went to him, and when he taught me, he started me from scratch. He teaches the method where you drop your jaw when you breathe, and your upper lip and teeth are always on the mouthpiece. And there's an embouchure. I've never seen a teacher teach that before, but I know. Do what he says. I took lessons. I started from scratch. He got me on the long tones, the octave exercises, scales and thirds, vibrato exercises with the metronome. And I did a year with him. Totally changed my sound. Totally freed it up. Much more relaxed sound than I ever had. And I practiced for an hour and a half to 2 hours a day. That wasn't me. Like I was the kid that never practiced piano. That was always being yelled at by my piano teacher, by the way. And when I had Garten, I was done college, and I knew how to practice by then. I knew slow things down with a metronome. I knew what was the right thing to do, and so I was ready to do what he needed me to do. And I practiced half hours, 2 hours a day. Substitute teaching, and on my breaks I'd be practicing my exercises, and I loved it. So he starts working with the band in the fall of '96 when I was running for Durning. And I remember Stevie White telling me about that, and I thought, well, it's about time. And they went up a swing and string, and the band did sound like a whole different band in '97. They're very, very, very tight that year. I think they could have won. They didn't win, but they could have won. And Garten was making his mark in that band, and I will say that first year, what a mark he made with that band. So he'd work with them, and Herbie would have him come up and work toward the end of the season. When I took over for writing, which was in the summer of 2001, I said I want Garten working with my music, and I'd have him. I tried to get him up as early as I could. I still was doing a lot of trial and error, and back then, and actually, that I don't know if you know this, but back then I had no idea what I was doing. I absolutely had no idea. It was all trial and error. I would just write this, I write that, and oh, that sounds terrible. That sounds terrible. The only thing I had going for me was the ability to tell that something was not working for the band. That was it. I did not know what I was doing at all. And
so going into writing the routine for 2002, you kind of were feeling like you're just sort of feeling this whole thing out.
Even though I wrote those, well, also I knew I had to step up my game. I wasn't going to do what I did. I wasn't going to write the way I wrote for the other bands. I had a new style, and the young guys in the band wanted more technical music too, so that was an influence. But I guess I knew what I was doing. I mean, I did write 9 routines before I went back to Fralinger, so I guess I could write a routine, but like to get the songs really the transitions, because one of my things is seamless transitions from song to song. A transition that's like pulling back a rubber band and then ping, shooting the next song. It took a lot of trial and error to find those. The later years, after the 8 in a row, I had a whole vocabulary of transitions that can do what I wanted to do. But when I wrote for the night routine, I didn't know what they were yet. I was only trial and error. Mm-hmm. So, it would take me forever and ever to find the right answer. I was so glad the night I found that transition into If Ever I Would Leave You. That was a nice transition. But it took a whole bunch of tries week after week to get to that. So anyway, with Garten, then he would bring everything to life. He would, but I'm going to tell you about Garten. Like, technically, he knew the markings to put in there to make the music come to life, and he knew how to teach them. But there's something else. Garten could stand in front of that band, put no markings in music, have his hands behind his back, and they were already played better just from him being there. I think they were just afraid of the guy, and they would just play better. Everything was better just him standing up in front of the band. If he could be in front of the band, the judges stand, we would probably be even better. I mean, we'd have perfect score plus extra credit points. If he was in front of the band, you say, but he wasn't allowed to because we were drilling. Like Garten doesn't. I don't know if he even realizes how good he is. He has this magic power. When he worked with a routine, it wasn't just playing the markings. It was beyond that. There were things he was doing with the band, and then when they played, they were just on a different plane. They just were on a different level. He could get in front of the Philadelphia Orchestra and get them to be the best symphony in the world. He's going in front of string bands. These are amateur players. These are not professionally trained players. We have a few, but not that many. They were not professionally trained players. And when he was in front of the band, we have recordings. Like, there's one, if you go on YouTube and listen to us doing the Ukrainian routine, one of those rehearsals where I put the slideshow of pictures of Ukraine, that does not sound like an amateur ensemble. That sounds very, very, very professional.
Right.
Very,
Right.
and it did help that we were in a gym with lots of reverb too. But yeah, boy, that recording, I cherish that. There's 2 weeks in a row, and each one had a different sound, but I do cherish those because, man, and he was in front of the band when he did that. He's the master of teaching,
Yeah.
unmatched.
How did you take over for Herbie from 2001 to 2002? How did that transition happen? You were not in Fralinger. You rejoined Fralinger and you took over as writer. How and why?
Well, all right. We'll go back some steps. So you said I rejoined Fralinger. I wrote for Garten for 2 years. And then I decided I don't want to write for string bands ever again. I'm just going to go to Fralinger and play. I am not writing again. I'm just going to go there, have fun. I would just sit in the back of the banjo section, play chords, and that was it. That's all I wanted to do when I got there. I remember when I was coming back, Warren asked me. It was the night after show of shows.
What year is this now?
This is 1998. And one of the questions Warren asked me, he says, will you be writing for other bands? I said, no. I'm not going to. So I guess they didn't want me writing for other bands when I was with them, from that statement. And I said, no. I said, I don't want to write ever again. So I come back, and then we did the Toy Soldiers. But they did have me write songs. Like, they had me write the Walk On song, the Walk Up to the Line song, March Along Together for that. They had me write the Walk Off for the Spanish year. They had me write the Walk Off the next year for 2001. It was Alabama Bound. So Herbie comes to me after the last rehearsal before show of shows in 2001. And he says, John, what do you think about writing a whole routine for this band? And I said, number one, I don't have the time. Number two, we're not going to win with my writing. And I just squashed it right there and walked away. And I never heard about it from him again. And so I guess he doesn't really want me to write anyway. But I figured we were already getting a second almost every year in a row. We had by then it was a 15-year dry spell. And no matter what we did, we didn't win. I thought we could have won with that hobo routine in 2001. I thought the band could have won in 95 with Jazz New Orleans. I thought they could have won with a String and Swing. Although there's some good bands in 97 too. Nice stuff. So I squashed it. So then the theme committee invited me to be part of them in the summertime to get me be somebody's musical input. So I go to this meeting, I don't know if it was like June or July or whatever, and they're talking about doing a night theme. I don't think they even submitted the theme yet. I think they were talking about submitting it. And then they talk about this, and then Herbie kept on saying, well, John can do this. And John, oh yeah, he make that sound good. And I'm just sitting there quiet like, I don't know what's going on here. And then finally, Warren says, Herbie, who's writing the routine this year? Are you writing the routine? Who's writing this routine? Now, nobody ever asked me, John, do you want to write the routine? And it was never like, yes, I will write the routine. I don't remember how that happened. Yeah, a lot of stuff blew up there. People were angry. There was like yelling back and forth and stuff. And I wanted to sneak out of the whole thing. Nobody actually asked me, John, do you want to write the routine? But at the end of the meeting, I was the arranger for the band. I don't remember how that happened, but I never actually said yes. I still haven't said yes. So, I mean, they thought the band would have mass exodus. They told me, don't tell anybody you're writing. They said, we don't want people walking out. We don't want people being upset. I kept my mouth shut. And turns out everybody in the band knew because everybody else was talking about it. And here I'm keeping it quiet to keep, because they wanted me to, because they didn't want to upset the band. And here, they already know. So then I start bringing things up in that summer. And I remember they wanted me to write the from Festive Overture by Shostakovich, and they played the CD for me. I said, this band can't play those rhythms. I said, that's way too hard. So back then, I used to hang out at the Philadelphia Public Library. That became my hangout place when I was a senior in high school. I would go there and look up choral music in Philadelphia. I got to drive there. I just started driving and go to the Philadelphia Library, and I just loved that place. They knew who I was when I came in there. I would research my routines there and have them help me find songs for them. So they got me the score there for a festive overture, and I basically transcribed it to string band. It was not an arrangement, it was a transcription. And we worked with a small group, and it worked out very well. And then I introduced it to the whole band. I rehearsed it very, very slowly, very methodically. And we found that it was working. It definitely was. That was a turning point. I will say that's probably the only thing that I've transcribed note for note that actually sounded good that we played. There have been years after I transcribed things, like we did the space theme, and they gave me the Independence theme, Independence Day theme from the movie. I just transcribed what was on there, gave it to the small group, like the really good players, and it sounded awful. And then I figured, well, let's try with the whole band. Maybe with a full sound it'll sound good. It was awful. It just was terrible. So we walked away from it. We just didn't use it. And I thought, like after the festive overture, I'm going to be transcribing all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of great stuff out there, and things weren't working. I just had to find ways of writing things to make our band actually come to life. And the festive overture, that was a very special moment. And I was very proud of that. Very, very proud of that year that we played that. And I know the band was proud. The band was very proud to play that, and they were clean. They were very, very clean on that.
So you wrote that routine pretty quickly. If you took over in July, and
you know what, it might have been June, but I know it was late. It wasn't. It wasn't like February, March, April that I was planning for that. It was like I think it was like June or July. I was not a quick writer, and it was just very hard for me back then finding the right thing. I didn't want to give him something that was bad. And I tried things that didn't work. So, and I was very happy with the end result. And I don't know if you know this, Herbie wrote the ending. They weren't satisfied with any endings I had. And he came up one week with the, let me see. The Great Gate of Kiev from the Pictures in It. And band loved it, so that was his. The only thing I put was like the stinger in the end. But he wrote that whole sequence before that. So I didn't write the ending of that routine. That was his. Space Here was the same thing. They had him write. And I don't remember what theme that is. But they ended with my which I got from Ted Heath. So basically, I didn't write the ending of that space routine. And they also had Herbie write another intro. They didn't like my intro. I had the Star Trek intro where it goes do 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 do, and then ba 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 ba. There were a lot of intonation problems with that because we had small sections playing each note, and then Herbie came in with the what do you call it? And the band loved it.
Okay.
I wasn't going to say no. That, and I didn't care. I didn't care who wrote what part of the routine. I wanted that routine to be a number one routine. I didn't care. So, so his part, everybody liked his part. I said, let's just keep it because that, you know, if they like it, it's got to be good. I didn't expect to win the parade with that theme.
That must have been incredible when you went from, you know, your second year basically writing for Fralinger, and you win.
It wasn't expected. It wasn't. I just figured. In fact, one guy made a joke. Christian Lawler made a joke one week. Starship second prize, and I always put joke titles on the routine music, like with the Knights. Instead of Knights in White Satin, I put the title was Knights on Foam Horses. I had a joke title every week, and people were like, "Are we serious? Are we going to use that title?" I think the last title I put in the space was Yoda One for Me. But we had I was going to put Starship Second Prize as a title one week, and I thought, no, that's going to jinx us. I said I'm not going to put that, even though I thought we're just going to get second anyway because we get second every year. Good thing I didn't do that. Oh my god, good thing I didn't do that. But it was a funny title. What were the titles I had? The Pirates. The last title I put was the Pirates of Penzance. The Pirates of Pensport. We did Arabians, and the last title, like I had all these other titles, but one I put on there at the end, the last one was Dancing Chic to Chic. And then the TV announcer, Jake Hart, said after we got done, he says Dancing Chic to Chic. And I thought, I wonder how he came up with that. Turned out he went to our rehearsal and he saw it on the score. And a few weeks later, he says, John, he said, you guys should have used that as your title. You would have won the Custer's Last Stand Award. I said, what? We could have won the award with my title? We didn't use my title. We didn't use despite the fact that we won the parade, like, I want to win Custer's Last Stand. I have these titles all the time. And it's funny that he liked it so much. But I know there's guys that have all the music, and they have all the drafts from week to week to week. And I'm telling you, they were drafts. Like, music was not finalized until December.
Wow.
The Latin routine, this is how bad that got. The Tuesday before Christmas, I brought the last four measures, but I brought 4 different versions of the last 4 measures, and I gave them out on slips, and I had them vote A, B, C, or D.
Wow. So you were down to the wire on a lot of things, huh?
Oh, yeah. A lot of like demands, like, John, when are you going to get this done? I said, okay.
Now, would you consider yourself to be a slow writer, or what? Why was that? Because you were a perfectionist and you kept revising at home, or what? Why did you find that to be the case? That you
a lot of stuff failed. A lot of stuff, like the Latin theme, that one, failure after failure. One week, there was this thing I heard on Drum Bugle Corps. And I thought this sounded awesome. I brought up to the band, what awful. Well, now, the problem with the Latin routine is, so much Latino music is brass playing it. Brass stuff is really tough to transfer to a saxophone ensemble and have them have that same feel. Mm-hmm. Whenever, most of the stuff I was transcribing was brass groups. Terrible, awful stuff. I was like, this has got to go. Yeah. That week, people were so mad at me that week. They said, you ruined the routine. When I brought that in there, I thought it was going to be full of fire. I just, and I don't know. But I can tell you that after the 8 in a row, I can now tell when somebody gave me a recording of something, if I can make that a winning arrangement or not. Or at least, something that's like great for Fralinger. I could tell. and because I had enough years, and I could have a song go into a song, like I know what I can do now for a transition that will get it there, slam dunk.
Mm-hmm.
So the 8 in a row, there was a lot of trial and error, and you know what, like, people were angry about it, but are they angry that we have 8 in a row now? And we won music effect every time we won. We had 10 first prizes, and the one thing in common with them was I noticed that the music effect was always first place when we won. Even the year we did Indians, when we lost in every category except for the music effect. All the times that we didn't win first prize, we also didn't win music effect. So I feel there's a big connection there.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. And when we did the robots, music effect first place. When we did the haunted, music effect was first place. Except for the Knights, we got first place arrangement with the Knights.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only one where we came in less than first, where the music effect was first. But it seems like the music effect was very, very important. So I think I did the right thing. People were mad. People didn't like it. But the trial and error and not sticking with something that's mediocre
Mm-hmm.
and just trying something else. I used to try lots of stuff.
Well, one point you made was try a lot of things, and if it doesn't work, throw it out and move on to something else. And that's a good pearl of wisdom. I was going to ask you about your pearls of wisdom for arranging and people interested in arranging. That sounds to me like a really good pearl of wisdom.
If anything I can advise to them, I can't tell them what to write. I can't tell them what's best. All I can tell them is you need to have the guts to just throw it out if it doesn't work. I used to find if I have to ask people, what do you think? Then I already know I don't like it. I already know it's not working. If I have to, I learned that. Whenever I had slam dunk, I'd leave the club just smiling, and I didn't even ask anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And this was all subconscious. And I started to realize, like, every time I'm asking people, what do you think of this? I knew it wasn't right. And this is what would happen. I would bring things up, and I listened to it and said, that's awful. Oh God, that's awful. I get out depressed, and I go to Nick's Roast Beef, and I buy a roast beef sandwich after rehearsal in a night to cheer myself up. I used to leave that club so depressed over something I brought them that sounded terrible. And I had a very hard time dealing with that. So
because you would probably spent the entire week or more working on it, right? And it was kind of your baby, and then you take it there, and it's just...
Back then, during the 8 in a row, it was day after day. I would be working till like 10:30 till midnight at nights on the music, exhausted. And
then you'd have work the next day.
Yeah. And then I bring it to rehearsal. It was terrible. Things were different after 2012, 2013. It was a lot easier for me. I didn't have to spend all these late nights. But doing those 8 in a row, it was a nightmare. And just things weren't working. The Latin routine, the thing was coming apart at the seams. One night I got so upset. I walked around and took pictures. I got into nighttime photography. That was the fall of 2005. And I was on the Camden waterfront. I got my favorite picture ever of all the photographs I got that night. I was just so sad, and I was taking pictures of Philadelphia, and I did got some really awesome nighttime shots. All the colors of the spectrum were reflecting in the water that night. But I just remember how sad I was walking around that waterfront. Like, I can't bail out of this routine. I failed. We're failing. And that was, it was hard. It was very hard on me. So, I don't know. I don't like when things don't work musically. It doesn't feel good. On October 17th, 2005, Jeff Frisella gave me a recording of the Blue Devils in 1995, playing an arrangement of Caribe. Let's take a listen to that recording.
I was so impressed at the aggression and the fire and fury in that recording that I transcribed it for saxophones and had it ready for Frailinger's rehearsal on October 25th. This became an epic failure in the transfer from brass to saxophones. Let's take a listen to a recording of that rehearsal. I was very depressed at the failure of that rehearsal, and as a result, a few nights later, I went wandering aimlessly in Philadelphia and Camden, taking photos. Ironically, I took my favorite nighttime photo ever. It was of the skyline of Philadelphia. You could see all the colors of the spectrum reflecting in the river. I entitled that photo Spectral View, and I've even sold it several times since then. Let's take a look.
I'd like to shift gears because I want to make sure that I don't forget to ask you this, but talk to me a little bit about your process for writing a routine and a little bit about just sort of, even nuts and bolts. How many sax parts do you like to use? How did you arrive at that number? And how do you think about that and just putting a routine together?
So it hasn't changed since the 90s. Like you said about Italian American, 3 altos, 2 tenors, baritone bass, sometimes split, sometimes not. The numbers haven't changed. So now Fralinger has a very heavy tenor section, so I can get a nice solid 4 parts with alto, alto, tenor, tenor. In the 90s, I'd work with bands that didn't have such big, like Durning, didn't have such a big tenor section, and to get 4 parts out of them, I would go alto, 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 tenor to do 4. But I know IA was alto, 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 tenor, tenor. Fralinger, it's basically alto, 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 tenor, tenor. But like if you look at the gypsy routine, you had 3-part tenors, where the altos went in the saber dance.
Mm-hmm.
The altos was in a triad, rolling down to the inversion of the triad,
Yep.
and the tenors did the same exact thing mimicking, and it was 3 tenor parts.
Okay.
Yeah, and I couldn't do it any other way. I needed it. So I did have 3-part tenors for Fralinger and Place to Place. I have had 5-part altos. In the cowboy routine, there were parts where the tenors took the melody, and I split the altos in 5. I would only split altos in 5 if they are the background chords. I wouldn't actually have them as the top chord, as like the prominent part. So you can split them in 10 if you want, if they're the background part, as long as they can play in tune with each other.
Mm-hmm.
But so there were times where I did have the altos in 5. It wasn't that common. If you want to know my biggest challenge as an arranger, so often I don't have enough to split into what I want. Like I've written some arrangements for Philharmonic of Southern New Jersey. What if I want 4 trumpet parts at one spot? They only have 3 trumpets. What if I wanted a trombone quartet? They've got 3 trombones. String parts, I could have as many parts as I want because they have sections. I always find there was always a spot where I want one more part to do that. Fralinger, we'd have a pit band, and the pit band, from what I remember, I think it was a 36-piece string pit band. That's right, because we used to do 3 pit bands, 3 different suits, 12, 12, 12. So the pit band was basically tenors and altos, but there might be a baritone in there. But it was basically tenors and altos. So we would basically have a tenor alto choir of 36.
And how many would you have on each of those parts? Like how many saxes would be playing alto 1, how many alto 2 approximately?
So in our band, just to clarify things, I came up with a new term, divisi for the top part. It's really wrong. It's totally wrong. A divisi, is actually a division in one staff. But I started that actually before I wrote the routine. When I wrote Cumana and Viva Italia, I called that divisi, and I gave them all the runs. It actually should have been called Obligato. I remember we would have 8 to 9 divisis, and there might have been a year or two we had 10. But basically, divisis averaged in 9, and divisi is the highest part. But divisi split. So we had divisi, and we had the lead alto on the second part, but I always wanted more oomph. So I might have 5 divisis on the top part, and then 4 divisis with the second alto to get some extra oomph in there. And then you have the third alto. I don't remember the numbers of the third alto. Maybe like 8 to 10 third altos, something like that. Tenors, I think there were about 12, 10 to 12 tenors each year. So it would add up to 36. So that's basically the...
So when you say divisis then, so that's the first alto section essentially, and that's split in half.
Sometimes I split them in half. Often.
Okay.
Often split them in half. Except for the runs. The divisi was always on unison in runs unless I absolutely had to have... Or if I had a super sax run, where I had all the horns in harmony on the runs. Now the divisi would be like 5 and 4.
Okay.
And 4 would be with the second altos.
Okay.
And it did work out numerically that there was more second than first that way. Like if there were 5 divisis, there might be like 7 or 8 on that next part down. But the establishment of the divisi section really set the talented players, the ones that are very technical, free to really run away with this music.
Any words of wisdom, additional words of wisdom for people interested in learning arranging or just writing in general, arranging or composing?
I hope that they could all have the opportunities I had. And it was a rough start. It was very hard. When I started with arranging, bands that couldn't play my arrangements, like before I wrote like routines and stuff, if a band couldn't play my arrangements, they'd say, "Oh, it's just a bad arrangement." Instead of working it and getting the notes right, they just say it's wrong, bad right away, and that's what new arrangers get before they're established. And I just would like every arranger to get their fair chance, and to have a group rehearse their arrangement to the point that it's solid, so they can actually hear it and know. And then really know, instead of just saying, "Oh, well, it's a bad arrangement." It's like the wolf with the sour grapes. The wolf can't catch those grapes. So he says, "Oh, well, they were sour anyway." So the band couldn't play the arrangement. Well, it was a bad arrangement anyway. I would hope that all string bands would utilize their arrangers in their band and really use their arrangements. Even if they're not totally sold on all those arrangements, they're putting on a 2-hour concert. They can give that guy a chance on at least one song. Give him that song. Rehearse the song. Get the parts down well. Let that person get some satisfaction out of the arrangement. That person will be encouraged to arrange more. And arrangers will usually get better. They're going to get better with time, the more they write. I think they should get better. There's no bad arrangement. It's just a matter of personal taste. There's no bad music. When I was in junior high, I listened to rap all the time, believe it or not. I listened to loads of rap, and I would stay up all night listening to Power 99. Now, I don't listen to rap. I don't consider that bad music because I don't listen to it now. It's just something I don't care for anymore. I still consider it's music. I play in these community bands. There's songs and there's pieces in the book that I just don't like, and there's people that like them. It's not bad music. It's just it's not my taste. Every arranger, the first thing they have to do is please themselves. You, as an artist, the first thing you have to please is yourself, because you're doing it because you're making something that you enjoy. That's the first thing. I wouldn't want to teach arranging because I just turn people into me. And there's other styles. They're welcome to copy my style. They're welcome to listen to it. They're welcome to talk to me and find out, well, how was this done? I want to make this effect. But I don't want to turn them into me. I want them to turn into themselves. I didn't turn into Herbie Smith. I turned into something I didn't even know I was going to be. Even as a teacher, like what I'm doing with my kids is the level that I wanted, but it's actually, everything's a little different than I was picturing when I started, but I like it.
Well, those are great pearls of wisdom, and I'll tell you, John, it sure has been a pleasure talking with you. I think we could go on, and I think we're going to have to do another one of these because I've got about 20 questions that I could just go on and on with you, but I really have enjoyed talking with you tonight. It's really been a pleasure, and you're such a talent and such an inspiration, and it's really been exciting for me to hear some of the backstory behind all of this. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Yeah, and I feel very honored that you included me in this amongst Herbie Smith and all these great arrangers you've interviewed. I'm very humbled that I could be part of this.
Thanks so much, John. I really appreciate it. Great to talk with you.
Okay, have a good night.
Here is an inside view of Fralinger's routine for the 2007 Mummers Parade, showing how the music evolved and came together. And I'll be revealing a special surprise at the end. Most traditional harmonies we know of are made from chords stacked in thirds. Let's take a triad. If you go 1, 2, 3, and you play 1 and 3, you have a third. 1, 2, 3, 1, 3. Together makes a third. Put the third and stack another third on top of it, you have a triad. If you've ever seen the Three Stooges and they go, hello, hello, hello.
Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello. Oh. That's great.
They are stacking thirds and making a major triad. Triads could be major, they could be minor, they could be diminished, they could be augmented. But what if we stacked fourths? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's called quartal harmony. Quartal. Quartal. Let's stack another fourth on top. Let's stack another fourth on top. It's a nice ethereal sound that they have. Action News theme song, at the end, they do a bell chord all stacked in fourths, like this. If you listen to Quaker City's routine from 1984, they do a transition where they have two bell chords stacked in fourths. Fralinger did the same thing at the end of their routine. If you listen to Miles Davis and you know his piece, So What? It's stacked in fourths. Once again, that's called quarto harmony. If you listen to Fralinger's 2007 routine, you'll notice that there are several examples of quarto chord voicings. One example of quarto harmonies in the routine is Big Noise from Winnetka. The original intro was a series of quarto chords rising, like this. The original introduction I arranged for Fralinger for the 2007 parade came from the Hi-Lo's album, All That Jazz, and the title of the piece was Summer Sketch. I thought the piece sounded like a great fit for the routine. When I presented it to the band, I gave it the title Navajo Sunset. That way, nobody would be questioning whether or not it had anything to do with Native American Indians. Here are the saxophone parts of my arrangement of Summer Sketch, played on piano so that you can see how they fall together. Not all my arranging ideas came while sitting at the piano. Sometimes they came up at odd places. For instance, one afternoon I was walking around Berwyn Flea Market, probably shopping for used instruments. And I was thinking of this figure that we've all heard before. And I thought, what if I take that and put it in major? So I came up with the idea, let's start on a C major triad, down low, and then bring it up as an explosion into the altos in the E flat 11th. Built in fourths, quarto harmony. And then resolving to an F sharp minor 7th. So in sequence, it came out like this. So on December 7th of 2006, we realized our routine was running overtime and we had to make a cut. So we decided the best place to cut is at the beginning. So I had to cut out the part with the rising quarto harmony. And I wrote 2 abridged intros, and I brought them up to the band, on December 14th. They played each of those, and they took a vote. Let's take a look at those two intros. Both Choice A and Choice B of Fralinger's abridged intro started with the Flintstones run. What made them different was the background parts. For Choice A, you had 4 chords at the beginning following straight quarter notes, giving it the Flintstones feel. 1, 2, 3, 4. On Choice B, the background chords had a syncopation similar to the rhythm behind the Jetsons run. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's listen to the MIDI of Choice A that had the Flintstones feel. Now let's listen to the MIDI of Choice B that had the Jetsons feel. So they chose the Flintstones over the Jetsons. One night in the fall of 2006, Anthony Tenuto comes up to me after rehearsal. He says, "John, the music's too easy. The runs are too easy." I thought, he's going to be sorry he asked for it. So I went home and I wrote the most ridiculous run and put it into the finale. Let's take a look. And just to show how ridiculous that run was, I'll play it on piano in slow motion. And you probably noticed another example of chordal harmony. Let's listen to Fralinger playing it in the 2007 Mummers Parade. So you've all heard Fralinger's 2007 routine, and you've heard this figure. They asked me where I got it, and I would not tell them. I wanted to save it for a special moment. Since then, other string bands use the same figure, not knowing where it came from. Let's take a look at the original source. Now you know where it came from. You're welcome.
A warm thank you for being part of this enriching interview with John Wernega. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to explore many of my other interviews on my Saxophonista YouTube channel. Discover interviews with legends like Herb Smith, Bill Garten, Jim Fox, Tom King, John Gilbert, and Chris Farr, just to name a few. Your support means the world to me. Please share your questions, comments, and suggestions with me. I always love hearing from you. So thanks again for being part of this musical journey. And for now, signing off.